This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fists. My name is Frank Latirzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, joined by former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, Jack Hirsch. Jack, how are you tonight?
Hey, good, Frank. You call yourself a full-time observer, but for the Usyk Du Bois fight while it was going on, I was at the Jet Giant game at MetLife Stadium. So I saw a few of the rounds on YouTube when I got back, the next day. Of course, I knew the result. And of course, I watched the decisive round that didn't end the fight, but the controversial round, I should say. The decisive round was the knockout, the controversial round where supposedly Du Bois, he should have been awarded the fight or he landed a low blow, depending on your point of view.
Well, Jack, in Philadelphia, and our man Pags will test this, we're not sure they actually play football in New York, but I'll take your word you were at a football game, okay? That's one.
Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. That's one. Number two, look, everybody's talking about the controversy. There are two things that I think have been overlooked about the fight itself, but let's just address the controversy first, okay? Technically, Du Bois's right hand was low, but he didn't hit him in the groin. And I think he's landed several punches lower than that throughout the course of the fight because he was definitely going for the body. Later that night, Jared Anderson fought, and he did a beautiful paint job on his opponent going to the body, and the referee delineated before the fight, due to the controversy in the earlier fight, here's the low blow, here's the line, okay? But I just have a feeling, Jack, that if Usyk landed that punch on Du Bois and it dropped him, I really do think it would have been scored a knockdown. I watched it in real time. I didn't think it was a low blow enough to do damage and hurt him. It was above the hip, below the rib, right on the spleen. They're the ones that hurt. I do think Usyk was hurt. So the question is, the only controversy is this. If it's ruled in knockdown, does Usyk beat the count and survive the round? I think based on what I saw, now I know he had a 4.5-minute rest, and there was 2.5 minutes left in the round. But based on what I saw and from what I know about Usyk, I do think he would have beat the count, Jack. What I don't like about it is it was the greatest punch that Du Bois ever threw. He worked his whole life to be in that situation. He'll probably never be in that situation again. And there's a chance that maybe it was taken from him.
Frank, let's make believe for 1 second, okay? You and I were in the instant replay booth, the way they have it in the NFL and Major League Baseball, where the official makes a call and it gets challenged. So they go to the videotape and a couple of people in the studio or whatever are looking at it. Now, the rule is you have to have conclusive evidence to overturn the call. And even though you feel one way, between you and I, there wasn't conclusive evidence that was a clean punch landed by Du Bois, not conclusive enough to overturn the referee's decision if we were in a booth. I think you would agree to that it wasn't conclusive. You're like leaning, well, I kind of feel it looked legal to me, so that's that's where you're going with it. I'm going with
I
it
would agree. I probably wouldn't overturn it based on that.
based on and I'm sure you looked at the different replay angles after, the day after the fight. I was looking, I went to YouTube looking at the different angles back and forth, and nothing was conclusive. Sometimes the punch looked a little higher than it did originally. It depends on the angle that we're talking about. And as far as the referee having to explain things beforehand, fighters know the rules, Frank. They know all these things. It's all for show, telling them no hitting behind the head. That you want to give as a reminder. Maybe you want to let them know, if you commit any fouls, this is your warning right now. I'm taking a point away. You're not being given a warning. Don't expect to be given a warning. I'm good with the referee doing that. But they know the rules. They're not going to get a crash course on what's a low blow.
My issue is, Jack, when I don't like that it was immediately called a low blow, because I'm not even sure the referee knew that, but he called that. Then he coached Usyk, and are you sure you're okay? And Usyk wanted to start sooner, and he said, no, you have more time. You can rest. You still have more time. And he's looking at his corner, and he's kind of confused on what to do. And then the other thing is, for the rest of the fight, Jack, every time Dubois landed a body shot, Usyk complained, and the ref scolded Dubois, which made him be a little more tentative, and it kind of took that away from him. So for the rest of the fight, I do think he was distracted by that, and it did throw him off. I think he thought he legitimately won the fight with a body shot knockout. So, look, again, was it low technically? Yes. But it was no shot to the groin that should have been a game changer and cause a disqualification or anything like that. I think Usyk was legitimately hurt, and he did the smart thing. He did what I would have done. I would have taken as much time as I could to gather myself, because I think he was really hurt. Do I think it changed the outcome of the fight? As I said earlier, I do think if the ref, and Usyk said this, but I don't know if that's gospel, but or I'm not going to treat it as if it's gospel, but he said he could have beat the count. And based on what happened the rest of the round, I know Usyk had a rest, but Dubois was just too passive in the fight, Jack. He didn't take enough risk, and that's the things I think that are being overlooked. He didn't take any risk, and I think Usyk is just so great. I don't think he's a great heavyweight, but I think he's great at slowing down boxer punchers like Joshua and Dubois. And it's like, I think he can get in their head, and the way he has that right hand out there, he punches off his parries. He makes you think, am I going to jab? He sneaks the left in. He's very coy that way, and I think he would have bought time to get through that fifth round.
Well, the question is, are we overrating Usyk just a little bit based on the Anthony Joshua fights? Because if you take
I've always said that, yes.
He had a close fight against Derek Chisora. He had to come on late in the fight to pull that fight out. And now this fight with Daniel Dubois, which he did a good job, but, he basically fought a lumbering heavyweight. And Dubois didn't look that lumbering in the fight. He looked a little more polished than normal. But let me ask you this. Do you think Usyk was being hurt in the body?
I do. I think some of them shots bothered him, yes.
Could Dubois' body punches have hurt any other heavyweight in the world? Is it a case of Usyk maybe being a little weaker to the body than we thought? Because keep in mind, Anthony Joshua went to his body. And Joshua is a fairly big puncher in close. Right. He can be on the inside.
I don't think Joshua was hitting him as hard as Dubois was. He was really concentrating on that body, especially with that right hand. I do think Usyk might be a little bit vulnerable to the body, Jack, but let's face it, Dubois can hit. I mean, he's one of the bigger punchers in the division, so that doesn't make him weak because he was affected by his body shots. I just think that I just don't like the idea, Jack, that we don't know. I would like to know if Usyk, if it wasn't called a low blow, could he have beat the count? We don't know that. We can only speculate. I just don't think it was a blatant low shot. And again, it wasn't on the groin. It didn't hit the testicles. I've seen some guys say it drove the cup up. Yeah, maybe it did, but I just think he was hurt by that shot. And once the referee immediately ruled it a foul, I just think Usyk did what smart fighters did, and he took what they gave him.
Frank, but the shot that landed on Usyk, which I would have called it a low blow, but you're not having the benefit of the replay, not seeing it as it actually happened, and not being in the ring like the referee was, who had to make a split call. The point is, those are not the type of punches that knock the wind out of a fighter. That the type of punches that do either to the solar plexus or really to the side of the body.
But Jack, he got him on the spleen, and that's a shot that will hurt you. The spleen is on the side that he hit him on.
I felt it was a low blow. I thought Louis Pabon, the referee, made the right call. He had to make that call in a split second. I remember there was a referee.
I understand that.
The late Louis Rivera was telling me about a fight he was once refereeing, and a fighter went down, and he was all set to call it a slip, and he was like telling the fighter to get up, figuring it was a slip.
I remember that.
This guy's hurt. I better start counting, but he didn't see it initially, what happened.
Jack, here's how I look at it. You say it's a low blow and you would have called it. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the way I look at it. Technically, yes, it was on the belt line. It was border. But you know what? I was driving in a 25-mile-per-hour zone today, about 34, 36, and I went right by a Cherry Hill police. And you know what, Jack? He ignored me. So I do think it's one of those ticky-tack things where, yeah, if you go by the letter of the law, it was a little bit low, but was it game-changing low? That's my thing. It wasn't game-changing low. It wasn't on the groin. I think Usyk got hit with shots that strayed even lower than that, and nothing happened. And then later that night, Jared Anderson, he put on a clinic as far as a body beating goes, and a lot of his punches hit the same thing, hit around the cup and the border area. I mean,
Anderson was landing so much to the body and throwing so many body blows that maybe it made it a little easier for the referee to ignore it. Because when you're throwing, like, let's say, 6 quick
no, he was throwing multiple body shots at a time. You're right. And one's going, a couple are not going to be perfect. Yeah, I can see that.
But then he lands a low blow, a punch a little low, but then he follows up so quick with body punches that land above the belt line. It doesn't really give the ref a chance, to.
And Jack, remember, that's a strategy. Ali said after the third round with Frazier, his hips were sore because Frazier was hitting him on that borderline area because he wanted to take his legs away. Usyk is a guy that has good legs, and as a strategy, if Usyk fought Joe Frazier and Mike Tyson, guess what? A lot of their punches are going to stray on the borderline too, because they're going to want to take his legs away. But let's give Usyk credit, Jack. This is his second fight in a row where he kind of did face a little bit of a crisis, and he came through. The 9th round against Joshua, it's the best round Joshua had against him. He banged him around pretty good to the head and the body, and it looked like he was back in the fight. Round 10, Usyk comes out, sucks it up, and just takes the play away. And, he did the same thing in this fight with Dubois, Jack. He got through the 5th round, although Dubois was like Klitschko against Joshua, a little passive. But he got through the 5th round, and I said to myself, once he got through the 5th round and never had a close call, I knew it would be all downhill for Dubois, and it was. So we have to give Usyk credit for that. Like, when he's faced a controversy, I think he can really dig down. I think he's a champion at heart. I think he's a tough guy. He doesn't want to give those belts up, and I think he comes to fight. But I don't think he's a great heavyweight, and if Tyson Fury is not spent from the beating that he took from Wilder a couple years ago and from his weight going up and down.
Beating from Wilder, he got knocked down heavily in the 3rd fight.
Jack, he took some big shots. His body, Wilder hit him with a couple right hands that didn't drop, but his whole body quivered. I'm not sure he's the same guy.
Don't shorten careers, what he went through. But
I disagree with you.
But Tyson Fury is fighting at the end of October, and in the mixed martial arts contest, even though it's under boxing rules, a mixed martial artist.
But it's not going to count on his record. The title's not on the line. It's a joke.
But they're not going to seriously negotiate for a fight between the two of them, Usyk and Fury, until you think after that, because they're going to be involved with that promotion, Fury. And Frank Warren says they want to make it early 2024. But Fury's a loose cannon in negotiations. If I'm Usyk, I'm not taking 30% and letting Fury have 70%. No. Not now. He's the guy who's kept busy. He didn't leave boxing. Fury basically left boxing. Technically, he didn't, because his match in October is going to be on the boxing rules. But it's a farce in that regard. It's ironic, Frank. Usyk's stock may have dipped very slightly on Saturday's fight, and Du Bois actually went up a little bit because we wrote him off before the fight. We thought Usyk would, do the business against him, and he wouldn't be a factor in the heavyweight division. But now when we talk about the non-elite guys, after Fury, Usyk, Joshua's still elite, Wilder still has an elite name. Du Bois is, maybe at the head of the pack.
Jack, his stock went up, I think, across the board with most people. But I can tell you this much. It didn't go up with me. And I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
Because he just played it too safe. I said on this show last week, if you're Du Bois and you're going into the fight, and you have one thing you do better. You're the bigger, stronger guy. And the only chance you have is delivering your power. I'm sorry. You can't sit there and wait and react for the perfect shot. You have to take chances. And I don't want to say he quit, but I just think he kind of took his heart a little bit. And after the 6th round, I think that Usyk convinced Du Bois that he was the better guy, that he hits harder than people think. Everybody said, well, you're in there with Joe Joyce. This guy's a cruiserweight. You know what? This guy's accurate, and he hit you clean. And they're the shots that hurt. So Du Bois' stock didn't go up in my book, but I think you're right. At the establishment, it did.
There are big fights out there. I'll give you an example. Joe Joyce fights Zhang. If Joyce reverses the loss in the first fight, which I think he will, a rematch, Du Bois against Joe Joyce would be great. Joyce stopped him the first time. Very interesting rematch. And if Du Bois wins that fight, imagine putting him in England against a fellow Britisher, Anthony Joshua. Even if Joshua...
Oh, there's fights out there. There's no doubt about that.
If he loses to Wilder, that fight would do tremendous business. And, of course, there's the Fury fact that he comes back to the ring. I think he beats Usyk, and I think you think so, too. If Fury gets down to serious business, which with him, you never know.
Jack, I look at Du Bois now I look at him sort of like the way I look at Anthony Joshua. Has the motor, the transmission, all the parts. Not quite sure he has the driver up here. And I kind of think in some way they're gracious losers. And it's like, again, I don't like that he didn't take chances in that fight. I don't like that Joshua didn't do that. When you're fighting a guy that's a master boxer, you got to go beat him up. That's all there is to it. You're not going to win boxing.
Now we're hearing excuses from Du Bois saying, well, after the 5th round, his head wasn't in the fight anymore. Come on, now give me a break. That's like Jerry Quarry when he saw his brother Mike Quarry get knocked out by Bob Foster on the same card he was fighting Muhammad Ali on. He said, oh, it took all the fight out of me seeing my brother lying there. Well, what did he expect? He knew that was a distinct possibility. Or better yet, listen to this one, Frank. If I'm Zab Judah, I could say, after I knocked Mayweather down, when the referee called it a slip, it took all the fight out of me. I had no desire. I felt everything was favoring Floyd. I won 3 of the first 4 rounds and knocked them down.
And Jack,
you could use that as an excuse.
And you're right, but Jack, that's what separates the greats from the near greats. And other guys, would that have swayed Joe Frazier? Oscar Bonavia knocked him twice. He kept going after him. It's like the greats find a way to fight through that. And Dubois didn't do it that night, Jack. And I don't like, even before that, I just think he was too passive and too risk averse. How's he going to win? How can you beat a guy that's a better boxer than you, that's smarter than you in the ring, that's quicker, has a more imaginative offense? How are you going to win unless you beat him up? And if you don't throw punches, you can't beat him up.
You know, while we're talking, a forgotten fight came into mind, and a shout out to the late Gennaro Hernandez. The way he won the title against Azuma Nelson fouled him. I think it was a low blow or something. And they were going to award Hernandez the title on the disqualification. And he said, no, I don't want it that way.
Yep.
Nelson is too great a champion to lose his title that way. And he continued to fight and won the title that way. I mean, that's heroic.
Jack, those guys are few and far between. And that's why we love them so much when they come along. I don't think that Dubois is in that category. I don't think Joshua is. I don't think that those guys will be a factor down the road. I mean, will they be in big fights and make money? Yes. But are they really going to be a threat to win a title against the best guys? I don't know.
Just remember this. Buster Douglas quits against Tony Tucker, an unmotivated heavy, not motivated, overweight some of the time, doesn't really train hard. You never know what spot these guys could wind up in.
Yeah, and Buster Douglas had some bad nights before he beat Tyson.
Quickly on Jared Anderson, we touched on him. He took a little step back after beating Charles Martin and having a very hard time and showing a lot of defensive leaks, getting hit hard and rocked. This was the right opponent from Rudenko, and he did a good job. He did a really good job, Jared Anderson. Kudos to him. Who do you want to see him back in the ring with next? He's got to step it up a little.
I have to think about that, Jack. I do think he's improved. I think he has ability. I'm not going to sit here and declare he's the next, but I will just say this. He has heavy hands. He can put his punches together. He looks physically strong. He looked a little bit better defensively in this fight. But again, he was fighting a guy that's limited, who's basically a body that can take a shot and every once in a while hit you back a little bit.
I got the fight, Frank.
Go ahead.
Big Baby versus Big Baby. Big Baby Jarrell Miller, who's, fighting again after his suspension. He's had a couple of fights since then.
But does he get anything out of beating him, Jack? Because Jarrell's bbeen gone so long.
Right, but it's a little bit of a name. I mean, and he's got. What about Dubois? I mean, but Dubois, it can be made. You want to know why? Because Dubois is promoted by Frank Warren, who's partners with Bob Arum at Top Rank. They're partners with Tyson Fury, so they could actually make that fight.
You know the fight they're going to make, Jack? I would like to see Jared Anderson against Frank Sanchez, but you know what fight? I didn't think of it until you just.
Sanchez? What's happened to him, Frank?
I don't know. He's MIA. But you know what fight I wouldn't be surprised, Jack, if they made? Effie Ajaba and Jared Anderson. Both fall on the same card. Ajaba only has the one loss to Frank Sanchez. He didn't embarrass himself. He was outboxed by a guy that's just better than him. And I think that would be an interesting fight. But again, if Anderson doesn't fight a Wilder, a Joshua, maybe a Dubois, somebody like that, he's not going to get any credit, Jack. If Jared Anderson beat up Jarrell Miller this past Saturday night, you know what you would be saying right now? Now, Jarrell Miller hasn't fought, has all kind of questions about his PED use. He's overweight. You wouldn't be giving him credit. So I don't think that would be a smart fight.
I'd give him a little bit of credit, a little more than the guys he's been fighting, out with the exception of Charles Martin. Early in his career, I gave him a big pass because he was a developing fighter, but it's really time to step up. You talk heavyweights and you say they're not like the past. When George Foreman stopped George Chuvalo, I was at the Garden in that fight, August 4th, 1970. He turned pro on June 23rd, 1969. He was a professional for only like 13 and a half months or so, right, Frank? Think of it.
Yeah, he turned pro on the Frazier Quarry undercard.
Yeah, and before that, he was fighting the likes of in February 1970, Gregorio Peralta. How long was he a pro for Peralta? Even though it was
It was
basically
like
a
his 16th
light
fight.
heavyweight, he was a really good veteran. And the idea he would be fighting these names, and then by the time he got to fight Smoking Joe, we heard, well, Foreman hasn't fought anyone. But compared to today's guys, think of it. Has Jarrell Miller fought anyone remotely in the league of George Chuvalo?
No, no. Jack, the problem is, though, how many of those guys are around? But you know what's interesting? If you go back and you look at Foreman's record, after he fought Chuvalo and beat Chuvalo, I think he had one guy that had a lot of fights that wasn't a world beater, but he was a survivor, and Louis Perez.
Boone Kirkman, maybe you're thinking.
And him, so he fought him.
Yeah.
He fought Boone Kirkman on the Frazier Ellis undercard. So that's February of 70. So Chuvalo was after that. My point is this.
Boone Kirkman was maybe it was under Frazier Forster. I'm not certain of that. Was it? No, was that the closer?
No, you're right. It might have been Frazier Forster because on the undercard of Frazier and Quarry, he fought Peralta. That's right.
Frazier and Jimmy Ellis, I think it was. Frazier and Jimmy Ellis. I think that was Peralta. But what does it matter, Frank? Yeah, that doesn't matter, you know.
But my point was, Jack, if you go back and look at Foreman after he fought Chuvalo in August 70, if you watch his level of opposition, it's really not that good after that. And the reason for that was a couple months later, 5-6 months later, Frazier beat Ali and retained the title, and Dick Sadler wanted to make sure they had no slip-ups because they wanted Foreman to fight Frazier for the title, and nobody was happier than Foreman and Foreman's people when Frazier beat Ali, because that's who they wanted to fight for the title.
Sure. Frank, I want to touch upon this briefly, at least. There's an intriguing rematch this weekend. Chris Eubank got stopped by Liam Smith last time out. He's having a rematch with him. Liam Smith is not a big puncher, and Chris Eubank had a reputation of having a chin
and a good chin.
Yet Smith stops him, hits him one shot, and and he's all discombobulated, and they stop the fight. Now, Eubank's been saying all along it's a fluke. He says he was teaching Liam Smith a boxing lesson. I didn't see it that way.
I didn't see the fight, Jack, but I did read what you said.
I saw a close 3 rounds going into the 4th. Maybe Eubank had a tiny edge, but there was no level of dominance on his part. The fight was very much up for grabs. Mentally, do you think Chris Eubank just gets over this? Or what? Now, he has training him, Bo McIntyre, for this fight. He had Roy Jones before that. And, and fighters tend to make a switch when they lose a big fight. And I'm not sure what Bo McIntyre or any trainer is going to bring to the table. I'm
going to give Eubank. I can't make a pick on the fight, Jack, because I didn't see the last fight, so I don't know about that. But I don't think that Eubank is going to be gun shy, and I'm a little bit surprised that Liam Smith is minus 150 favorite. Doesn't that surprise you a little bit? That's almost 2 to 1.
Not if you saw the first fight, because I think it's a mental thing. When a fighter loses a fight, gets stopped like that, sometimes they reverse it. Like a Lennox Lewis could get knocked out by Hasim Rahman. He knows he's better than Rahman. That's not going to change his outlook.
Right.
But if it's not a great champion, doubt creeps in, when you lose like that. But it's an intriguing rematch, and I'm kind of looking forward.
Joe Bergman says that Eubank didn't take him serious. Do you agree with that? I didn't follow that fight that much, to be honest.
No, I mean, he was certainly in shape, and Eubank has come up short in certain big fights, like Billy Joe Sanders. He came on late in the fight, lost a tight decision, and he lost a very close decision in the big fight to George Groves. He beat James DeGale on points. Chris Eubank Jr., in a way, is living off his father's name. He's a good, solid fighter in his own right. Some fighters are famous parents like Corey Spinks. When it came to Corey Spinks, even though it was mentioned he was Leon's son, he didn't fight anything like his dad. And no one linked the two of them together. In a certain sense, he was like his own
No,
guy.
the Eubanks are tied at the hip.
The Eubanks and Conor Ben
and Nigel, yeah.
And Nigel right now, they haven't kind of had like an own identity. Oh, what happened over the weekend too? I didn't see this fight. But Muhammad Ali's grandson, Nico Ali Walsh.
Ali Walsh.
I think the hype has to end with him. It was a little bit of a novelty in the beginning. And the kid has some ability. Don't get me wrong. He needed to have an extensive amateur background, which he apparently doesn't have.
No.
And so, but it was good for ratings. You milk it out and you hope he could be something he's not. They're kind of doing it in England now with Campbell Hatton, Ricky Hatton's son. A lot of people aren't that high on them, but they're keeping them winning for now.
And Prince Nassim's son just turned pro over the weekend too.
Right. And these guys,
I didn't see the fight, but I know he won in the first round.
Right, and these guys are going to be given an extra look. If he wasn't Prince Nassim's son, chances are he's not on the show. Campbell Hatton's not on those shows. But
right.
You never know. When Conor Ben started, his promoter Eddie Hearn wasn't too enthusiastic. He said, "He's just a kid." But Conor Ben started developing, but now he has this issue with Bada, with the steroids and all. And Robert Helenius, how do you like that? The guy who got knocked out by Anthony Joshua, the well-known heavyweight, just tested positive. Of course, he denies it. He has no idea what.
Denying it. They all deny it, though.
Alicia, a Bumgarner, and it's like, man, everyone is denying it.
Jack, I'm telling you, these MMA guys and these fighters are all doing something. They just feel that way, Jack, because they have to do it. I said most. Most of them are doing something because they just feel they have to do that just to stay even. Because the other guys are.
Yeah, but the part that gets me is everyone denies it. I would love to see one of the boxers say, "Yeah, I took it to get a competitive edge," because everyone else is taking the darn thing and they're getting away with it. I'm not going to lie about it. I took it because I'm trying to keep up with the competition. These guys are beating these tests, and I'm the one who's now going to be paying the price. But if I got to pay the price, what about everyone else?
But you know what's funny, Jack? People, regardless of what they say, we never believe them. Think about this. When Roberto Duran turned his back on Ray Leonard in the rematch, the people that like Duran say, "Oh, he had cramps. He ate a big meal too soon to the fight. That's why he quit." The Leonard fans want to say, "Oh, no, he knew he was on his way to get knocked out. That's why he quit." If Duran came out and said the next day, "Look, the reason why I turned my back on Leonard because I knew I didn't have it that night, and he was probably going to knock me out, and I didn't want to go through that," nobody would believe him. We never believe what they say. People believe what they want, and they have their own preconceived notions, and facts, logic, reality seldom changes that. Just like we spoke earlier. I believe Usyk beats the count if he got a count and wins the fight. But somebody that doesn't like Usyk or wants to look at it another way would say, "Oh, no, he wouldn't have beat the count. He was too hurt, and that's why he did what he did. It wasn't a low blow." So people see everything different, Jack.
I would have had more respect for Daniel Dubois after the fight had he lost a close decision. And they looked at the scorecards, and he wound up losing the 5th round. And had it been called a knockdown, that would have tilted the decision in his favor. And then he would complain about it. "It cost me the fight, this. But otherwise, he didn't come close to winning the fight. And that's what
other than that one punch, no.
It's like the rematch between Lewis and Schmeling. People forget there was a controversy because Lewis was attacking Schmeling with such a fury Schmeling turned his back at one point, and Lewis hit him a shot in the kidney
Yep.
inadvertently. Okay, technically, can you call it a foul punch? Maybe you can, but Schmeling turned around. So Lewis, wasn't aiming for the kidney, but maybe hit him there, and they were using it as an excuse in Germany. Oh, Lewis fought illegally. That's what caused Schmeling the fight. It's like splitting hairs, and like we were talking about, I forgot, was it during the show or before the show, Zab Judah and Amir Khan. Amir Khan completely dominated Zab Judah, completely. But he landed one punch that may have been borderline low. May have. I don't even remember clearly where it
I
landed.
saw it, Jack. It landed just like Dubois did. Same spot. On the border there. Wasn't in the groin.
But it was a little to the side, as I remember, not directly towards the middle, like this
Yeah,
one.
that's fair.
But the point is, could Judah realistically have expected Khan to be disqualified? Speaking of disqualifications, I got to laugh about this. Frank, in the movie Ali, you think this really happened? Ali and Foreman are called to the middle of the ring by the referee, Zach Clayton, for their instructions, and Ali won't stop talking. And Clayton, according to the movie there, and I believe it might be accurate. It might be accurate. They may have gotten the sound bite for real. Said, Ali, shut up or I'll disqualify you. No.
I remember reading that back in the day, Jack. I think Clayton did say that. Now he laughed.
Imagine Ali kept talking. And can you imagine Clayton?
Not going to happen.
Can you imagine Clayton really disqualified him?
Yeah.
Fight's over. George, you're the champion. Can you imagine what would have happened first in Africa? I think they would have taken Clayton to jail and he never would have
nothing. Ali knew nothing was going to happen. Let me just go back and touch on one thing, though, that you said about Dubois. You would have had more respect for him if it went the distance, and maybe that cost the fifth round, cost him the fight.
Yeah, then I'll listen a little more. Yeah, definitely.
Jack, I would have more respect for him if he got knocked out in the first round, if he at least went out trying. I didn't like the way he came out from the beginning. I'm sorry. I didn't like the way Stephen Fulton came out that way against Inouye. But in this fight, it's even more of a known Dubois had one chance to win. All we heard about was his power. All we heard Don Charles talking about was how hard he hit, how aggressive he was going to be, how he was going to Mike Tyson him, and he didn't do anything like that. He looked like Anthony Joshua round 25 after two fights. So I would have had more respect for him if he got knocked out early, giving himself a chance to win. He didn't. He played it safe. He got lucky with a shot that may have been fight altering. Turned out that it wasn't. And he basically submitted after that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but easier said than done. When you're
I know that
someone with so much more of a skill level than you can't just start throwing punches because Usyk took away his space.
I understand that. But Jack, how do you win then? You have to do something to shake it up. The other guy's better than you. He's better. What are you better at? You have more power. You somehow have to find a way to deliver it, or you're not going to win. So what's the difference if you go out in the 9th round or the 3rd round? Give yourself a shot to win. Nobody puts Tommy Hearns down for only going 3 rounds with Hagler.
People forget sometimes when fighters give themselves a chance to win and they get knocked out and people don't think they put forth the effort. Even Mike Spinks, they say, was scared against Mike Tyson, but Michael Spinks actually gave himself a chance to win. He threw a mean right hand and Tyson beat him to it, knocked him out.
Exactly. I think Spinks said
a chance to win.
That's exactly what I mean. I think Spinks went in there and says, I am not going to run from this guy for 15 rounds or hold him like Bone Crusher Smith. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to beat him. That might get me beat quicker, but I'm going to at least give myself a shot. And Tyson got there with the right hand first. Jack, another thing we wanted to talk about real quick.
Same thing. I mean, Jimmy Ellis tried to exchange with Frazier. Was it wise? He probably had no choice because he couldn't box. But okay, friend.
That's a good point. I agree with that. Ellis realized I can't run. I got to fight him. Well, if you can't hold him off by boxing him, what's left? Ellis took his shot. Joe was the better guy.
Frank,
Nobody put Ellis down for mailing it in.
Controversial fights, some endings that didn't go to the scorecards.
You don't want to touch on Shakur Stevenson and Frank Martin?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, because there are big implications on this. Big implications.
Jack, I think a lot of Frank Martin. I think you know that. I think it's too soon. And I also think that Shakur could be maybe a poor man's Terrence Crawford down the road where he's going to be generational. I don't think he has the power pound for pound that Crawford has, but I think he's that good. You've said that before. I know you agree with me. I think when all is said and done and everything is settled in the lightweight division, I think it's going to be Stevenson, not Tank Davis, as being the guy that history will look at and say he was the Terrence Crawford of that era. I think it's too soon for Frank Martin, and I think a lot of Frank Martin. But when you get a title shot, you got to take it.
Frank, there are big implications on this outside of the ring. Now, you're fantastic, and I learn a lot from you breaking down styles inside the ring, how fighters are going to fight. I kind of like to look at things outside of the ring. And let me tell you what the implications on this. Normally, Frank Martin's promoters wouldn't put him in with a Shakur Stevenson because Frank Martin is still considered an elite prospect, I believe. You know that, and you don't want to damage him against.
I think there's only 2 fights between them, but there's a difference.
Right. Now think of this. Shakur Stevenson fights for Top Rank. Frank Martin's with the PBC. Frank Martin's the mandatory. Top Rank and the PBC have to come to an agreement, basically to let to be co-promoters. But
right.
The PBC isn't going to come to an agreement with Top Rank. Are you hearing this here first? Okay.
Okay.
They're going to want it to go to purse bids, because if they win the purse bids, the PBC, that means they promote Shakur Stevenson in his fight against Frank Martin. And guess what? For now, Terrence Crawford's with the PBC. Who's Shakur Stevenson's best friend and mentor? Terrence Crawford. The PBC is going to get to work on Shakur Stevenson, treat him well, pay him well. It's a way of getting him to make.
That's a good point.
So I see stuff behind the scenes going on in that regard. I don't know.
So how do you think that affects the outcome of the fight?
It affects the outcome of the fight that Shakur Stevenson beats Frank Martin. Frank Martin probably gets paid very well by the PBC, and he'll still be good to bring him back. And it'll be one of those losses where later on he'll say, well, I wasn't quite ready for it. In a certain sense, I don't want to say they're willing to sacrifice Frank Martin to get Shakur Stevenson. It's like
that's kind of what they're doing, though, under your plan.
But it's like teams trading. Sometimes someone is willing to trade a player they don't really want to trade to get someone better. But that's what I see going down here. And I'll be proven wrong if Top Rank and the PBC come to an agreement to co-promote. Then I'm proven wrong, okay? But I think it's going to purse bids, and there's no way the PBC is going to allow themselves to lose the purse bids to Top Rank. And Top Rank on the Barbarian, they're not going to throw money away recklessly to promote this fight. They're not going to do it.
So do you think they fight?
I do think they fight, yes.
You think it happens? Okay.
Yes, I do think it absolutely happens. I think the PBC wins the purse bid. And then what happens after that? If Terrence Crawford loves being with the PBC, keep this in mind too, Frank. Terrence Crawford was promoted by Top Rank. He's not happy with his time at Top Rank.
No.
They couldn't get him the big fights. And he could be, Shakur Stevenson looks up to him. He's in camp with Terrence Crawford. Even Shakur Stevenson says Terrence Crawford's the best fighter in the world. He puts Terrence Crawford ahead of himself even. Okay? Which it's like his big brother.
You know who else is he's not an official advisor, but I've read that Terrence Crawford is spending a lot of time with as far as to learn about business? Warren Buffett.
Okay, there you go.
So maybe he has some influence there. Jack, before we move on to the controversial fights, one more thing. Earl Spence basically activated the rematch clause, and it looks like he and Crawford are going to go back at it probably sometime January, February, probably no later than March next year at 154. Any quick thoughts on that? I think we kind of knew it was coming.
Terrence Crawford's going to win the rematch, but if Errol Spence is in the gym the whole time and really badly wants to win, I think he could come out. He definitely a better showing than last time. And his showing, he didn't disgrace himself last time. I mean, he was beaten soundly, took a beating, but he was competitive, throwing punches, even though it was one-sided. I think he can come up maybe with a decent outing and lose a clear decision, perhaps. Something like that, where he could leave the ring with his head held high, but Crawford would win with room to spare. That's about the best scenario. I can't see.
I pretty much agree with that. I think that Crawford definitely wins. I don't know if it's as conclusive as it was last time because I have questions of whether Crawford could be that up. And I'm not sure. Crawford 154 may help him just as much as Spence, but I too like Crawford, and I'm not sure it goes the distance. But we kind of knew that Spence was going to do this. It was probably, I still think it's his best move. All right, controversial fights.
More likely than not, it'll be a cash out fight to Spence.
Right.
Not that he won't,
and they'll throw the towel quick if he's taking a beating.
I think about six rounds. It's not his night. He calls it a career, and that's that. But one last, let me just mention, Frank. The best place to put the fights in Dallas, because Spence will give it all he has. He'll have the crowd behind him, and that'll give him a small advantage. Even though he's not beating Crawford, it'll hype him up, and it'll help. It'll help.
And maybe Crawford will go for it if they pay him.
Yeah.
All right, Jack. Controversial fights. I wrote a couple down. If you have any that you want to get to, throw them out. But I'm going to start off with Tyson Holyfield 2. Give me a quick thought on that.
Yeah, well, Holyfield was going to stop Tyson if it wasn't for the biting. Okay, so
Tyson basically quit.
Yes, he quit. Yeah, got himself disqualified. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that, Jack. I think that Tyson emptied the wagon in the first couple of rounds, trying to get to Holyfield. He couldn't break him, and I think that Tyson panicked, and I think he saw that it's better to lose by DQ than being stopped by my career nemesis a second time. I mean, think about that. If Holyfield stops him again, that's like Frazier beating Ali in the rematch and going up 2-0. There's no coming back from that. I think Tyson panicked. He fooled a lot of people with the crazy routine, but no, he wanted out. All right. Leonard Duran 2. No mas. Give me a quick take on that.
Yeah, I mean, Duran quit. Did he analyze what he was going to do before he did? I think there's a good chance it was just spur of the moment. All of a sudden, he just turned around. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't think it was necessarily building up to it where Duran was thinking, oh, I can't go 15 rounds.
It was 4-3 after 7 rounds. It was a close fight.
Yeah, but you knew Leonard was going to be taking over more and more as the fight went along. It was Leonard was in better shape, and this wasn't the Duran of the fight. 5 months before? Physically, he wasn't in the same physical condition or mental condition for that matter. And Leonard fought a lot smarter. No big controversy to me. In that fight. I mean, Leonard won, and Duran mentioned the stomach cramps. So possibly had stomach cramps. Listen, he fought his whole career, and is that the only fight he had stomach cramps?
I think that Leonard I think the roles reversed from the first fight. Going into the first fight, Duran knew this will be the fight I'll be remembered for. I cannot lose. I think in the second fight, Leonard knew this is the fight I have to win. or I'll be remembered for losing this fight. I think that Leonard, as you said, was in great shape. I think Duran realized that, and it was probably Leonard's night. Leonard was embarrassing him and making him look bad at times. And I just think that made Duran say, you know what? I'm done. You know what? Take the title. You're not really fighting. You're moving around. The last time you fought me like a man, I think you're fighting me like a girl this time with your moving and your gyration.
Well, girls fight really well in this day and age.
Well, in 1980, they didn't.
Let me get to mine because mine are low blow fights. Okay, 2 low blow fights. The obvious one that's probably on your list: Duran and Buchanan. That was more relevant to what happened last Saturday with Usyk and Du Bois. I was at
that shot was plastered all over Ring Magazine. You saw that was low.
I was in the crowd that night. Okay, I wasn't at ringside. I was sitting, in the middle of the arena. So I thought that Duran need Buchanan. The way Buchanan from where
didn't Lobianco say that?
Duran's back was to me when I first saw it live. And what I remember about that fight, okay,
right.
Buchanan goes down, swooning down. And I remember his handlers going in the ring, and I think it was his dad who was one of them, not his chief handler. Gil Clancy was his chief handler for that fight.
Howie Albert and Gil Clancy.
Right, motioning to stay down. That's what I thought I saw, because Buchanan looked like he was about to get up maybe, and then he started to swoon more. Later, doctors said, oh, his testicles are swollen and he's all this pain. I don't think a physician from the New York State Athletic Commission was checking out his testicles the whole time and him lying on the table. But in any event, it was a low blow, clearly in the groin. It was a flagrant low blow.
As flagrant as they get.
But let me ask you this, Frank. What do you think should have been done? Lobianco missed the call, the referee, Johnny Lobianco. He missed the call. What he should have done, Johnny Lobianco, was, even missing the call, should have said to Buchanan, continue to fight, or I'm going to stop in the water to Duran. He never said it. He just felt Buchanan had taken enough of a beating.
He just waved it off.
He didn't want to go on. That's all there was to it. The way I looked at it, Buchanan was trying to win on a disqualification at that point because he was about to lose his title at the end. It happened at the end of the 13th round when the bell rang. And that was a way, that was his way to try to pull the fight out. Had Buchanan known they were going to stop it, he would have finished the last 2 rounds. No doubt about it.
I think he should have gotten the 5 minutes and the fight should have resumed.
But if the referee didn't determine it to be a low blow, how could he give him 5 minutes?
Well, based on that, yes. But I just thought, even seen on TV, Jack, as a little kid, to me, the replay looked like it was blatantly low.
It was blatantly low.
That's what I saw. But Jack, you know what? You know why they get over on this one, and this one hasn't festered as bad over time. The only thing that saved them is Duran was ahead in the fight overwhelmingly, and there was no sign of Buchanan turning it around or coming back. So I think it was like, okay, yeah, we missed the call. It really was a low blow, but Buchanan was not going to win the fight anyhow. So I think that kind of quelled some of the controversy. But it was a low blow. Clearly, the referee missed it. That's what happened. And
people forget Buchanan actually won a few rounds during the fight.
He did come back.
A big lead. Duran was probably up legitimately 9 rounds to 4. Buchanan was a great, great fighter that night. Buchanan would have been a nightmare for any lightweight that ever lived that night, the night that he fought Duran. He was exceptional. It took a super fighter like Roberto Duran to do what he did to Buchanan that evening. Buchanan was at his ass.
And no one had
started. Frank, the 5-minute rule. Let me go back to 1930. The only time the heavyweight title ever changed hands on a foul, when Jack Sharkey was disqualified in the 4th round when he fought Matt Schmeling for the title, vacated by Gene Tunney. Now, what happened the first 3 rounds of that fight, Sharkey was dominating. And in the fourth round, he hit Schmeling low, and it was a kind of borderline in a way like Usyk, Dubois, and the referee wasn't sure what to do, but the reporters got involved. One said he'll kill boxing in New York State unless you disqualify Sharkey. So Schmeling won the title being carried back to his corner. Schmeling wasn't incapacitated, but there was poetic justice 2 years later when they had a rematch for the title. Schmeling, the heavyweight champion, by all accounts, outboxes Jack Sharkey, should have retained the title, and gets ripped off, and Sharkey gets the disputed decision. So it was fair play at the end of the day.
That was one you wanted to talk about. Any other ones? Because I have a couple other controversial ones. But you want to go the low blow route?
No, you could go any other type of controversy. I'm okay.
All right, let's have some fun for the last 5 minutes. Maybe the Ali Liston rematch is the most controversial fight in heavyweight history. Okay?
Maybe of all time, maybe.
Okay, whether perhaps.
Dive or not.
All right. Do we agree that Ali landed a punch?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, he landed a right hand. So do you believe the knockdown was legit?
Yes.
Okay. But what looks bad about it is the way Liston rolls around on the ring, is about to get up, then collapses and falls back down. Ali's running around the ring, telling him to get up. Walcott really never gave Liston a count. Yeah. Then Nat Fleischer tells him, hey, it's over. He was down for 10 seconds. What do you think went on there?
Joe Walcott stopped the fight because Nat Fleischer said he was counted out. Nat Fleischer was the most powerful person in boxing.
In boxing, right? And he was the official timekeeper, I think.
No, he wasn't the official timekeeper. He was just reporting for Ring Magazine there. I'm pretty sure he wasn't the official timekeeper.
I thought he was the timekeeper, but I could be wrong. But either way, he said it was 10 seconds.
Right, but what people forget, they actually resumed fighting. When Walcott went over to Fleischer, they resumed fighting, and Liston was covered
in the corner. Yes.
So what would have happened had the fight resumed? I would have loved to have seen Liston fire back punches as when it resumed. That would have been something. And you're right, the way Liston was rolling around. I can't recall another fight ever rolling around the ring like that.
It didn't look right.
I think it was, though, a legitimate stoppage, but I don't say it with confidence now because Ali even questioned it, whether he hit him hard enough after. The way motion, get up.
You could see Liston's head turn from that right hand.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was hard enough to knock him out, and it didn't knock him out. And as you said, Liston was on his feet fighting Ali back when Walcott went over and Fleischer said, stop the fight. So here's the question, Jack. If Liston went into the fight and was going to take a dive, as some people infer, why would he get up and start fighting if he was going to take a dive?
Well, he was down for more than 10 seconds rolling around.
But he never got a count. Walcott never counted. He never counted one time.
Liston claimed later, to get up, you have to put one hand on the canvas to get up.
And he felt vulnerable.
And he felt that Ali was standing right over him. But would he be rolling around to get away from Ali? Everything was bizarre.
That didn't look right.
Everything was bizarre.
And I do think that that's sort of like Duran and Leonard, though. If we take away any of the funny business, I do think that Liston realized this guy's better this time than he was the last time. Ali filled out, looked like he was punching harder, and maybe Liston just said, you know what? I have everything against me. There's talk that the black Muslims are here. They might shoot me. There's rumors that the mafia was going to shoot Ali. And I just think he might have said, the heck with it. I'm out of here.
Yeah. The ironic part is Liston really trained hard for the rematch originally when it was supposed to take place.
In November of 64.
Yeah, I think had that rematch taken place, Liston in a good frame of mind and peak form, I think he goes the distance. I think he loses a 15-round decision to Ali. He just wouldn't quite. He'd catch Ali now and then, but not enough to knock him out. Lose 11 rounds to 4. That type
As
of
we see through history, has proven Ali just matched up with Liston.
Ali matched up with, I was going to say virtually everyone, but they.
Well, yeah, that's true too. But back then we didn't know that. But it looks like he matched up with Sonny. All right, Jack. We're out of time. That's about it.
Okay.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you next week. Have a good night.